The Patriots, a group of eminent Nigerians led by former Commonwealth Secretary General Chief Emeka Anyaoku, recently met with President Bola Tinubu at the State House, Abuja, and appealed to the president to send an executive bill to the National Assembly proposing the convening of a National Constituent Assembly with a mandate to produce a draft of what they call the People's Democratic Constitution. Responding to the request by the Patriots, President Tinubu assured the group that their request for the convening of a National Constituent Assembly with a mandate to draft a new constitution would be reviewed. The president expressed his respect for the Patriots and their contributions to national discourse. Meanwhile, elder statesman Alhaji Tanko Yakasai has advised President Bola Tinubu to exercise caution in handling the proposal for a brand new Nigerian constitution that will be produced by a 109-member Constituent Assembly and approved through a nationwide referendum. Yakasai, a former presidential advisor in the Second Republic, charged the president to tread carefully, consult widely, and think thoroughly on the proposal, as any hasty move could plunge the country into chaos and instability. Joining us now on the show to discuss the submission of the Patriots Group to President Tinubu is Professor Ritchard Nwokocha, Associate Professor of Constitutional Law, River State University, Port Harcourt. Good morning and welcome to the morning show, Professor Nwokocha.
Good morning, and good morning, Nigerians.
All right, excellent. So, first of all, I'd like to ask you, is Nigeria in need of a new constitution as proposed by the Patriots, and what should be the process? The process they recommended in terms of a national, a calling of an assembly, constituent assembly, is that the best approach in terms of looking at a new constitution for Nigeria?
Does Nigeria need a new constitution? My answer would be yes, even though it may be necessary to define new constitution. We do need something outside what we have now. So to the extent that it is structurally different from what we have now, it will be a new constitution. I like to consider in our constitutional history that things went wrong when, as a federated entity by nature, we adopted unitary policies when the military struck in 1966. So I think if we go out of the unitary structure that the military has created, which we have tried to tinker with every time we convene a constitutional conference, but we are not succeeding. If we move out of it and move into something more federal, then we will have come up with a new constitution. But that also includes something federal, even if you go back to what you had that was federal prior to this time. You recall that you recently adopted old national anthem as a new national anthem. So it is also possible to adopt a structure that is distinct from the structure that we have now, and it will be a new constitution relative to the present one that we are operating. So we do need one. And what is the best way? The traditional way for a people to write a constitution for themselves is to convoke a national conference or constitutional conference in which the peoples of that territory will agree on the best way that they can live together, guarantee security for themselves and their people, and provide an enabling environment for their people to attain their best within their individual and collective existence. The popular language in Nigeria for a federated unit is unity in diversity. So you find a way to wedge the people together in unity without sacrificing their right and ability to live their own way, each man moving at his own pace. So yes, a constitutional conference is a natural approach to constitution making, especially one who wants a new constitution.
But let's talk about the politics around this, because it looks as if we joke too much in this country. And I say that because it's not because I want to call my nation a nation that jokes, but because it personally hurts me. In 79, leading up to 79, yes, we had a Constituent Assembly. A lot of people sat, drafted the 79 Constitution. Then we continued from then on. In the 90s, during Abacha, we had a sit-down too like this. In fact, some of the resolutions was more state creation. So we saw Abacha pick and choose in 96 when he created more states. Under Goodluck Jonathan, we had another one. 10 years down the line, where's that report? Gathering dust, not implemented. We have not implemented that report. Now we are saying we want to do another report when we have not. So the question I will ask you is, what happened to that report, the confirmed report of Jonathan first? That's why I say we look like we're joking in this country.
I think, yeah, I think any right-thinking person will agree with you. It raises a question. What is it that we are trying to fix at every constitutional conference we are calling without being able to fix? What it suggests to me is that there is something wrong with either the agenda of those conferences or how we are convening them. Somehow we are not getting it right. We are not solving the problem. If we solve the problem with the 1979 conference, we will not be calling another. So what I see is a frame, a rectangular frame in which we are trying to force in a circle that is bigger than that frame. And we are struggling. Every time we come, we try to push it in, it's not going in. Why we are suffering and why we are calling conferences over and over without succeeding is that we are trying to tinker with a unitary constitution to see how it can suit a federal environment. It will not work. You know, you need to take your mind back to when you had a federal constitution in this country. Go back to history. You will not find any cries of marginalization. You will not find any situation where any region was saying there are too many people from this region in this place, they should go back to their region. No. When you have federative unions that are indeed federative, exercising fiscal federalism, every region or every unit produces what it eats. If it does not work, it will starve. Every union or every unit, federating unit, will look for businessmen, cut businessmen the way we do road work in London and in the United States and all that. They will do all that within their unit, inviting people from the other units to come and invest because they know that profits from in those investments will yield tax with which they will do things they need to do. The scenario was completely different from what it is now. So the reason we look like jokers and we are continually trying the same thing over and over. You know what they say in Nigeria? That the very definition of madness is trying to do the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. We are not getting it right because we are not attempting to create a suitable constitution for our territory. We are trying to tinker with the unitary constitution handed down to us by the military in 1966, struggling in every conference to try to fit it into the Nigerian frame. It will not work. So what we need is a serious-minded effort at crafting something that is suitable for our environment. If we have lost our way and if we no longer know what to do, we should ask ourselves, how is it that we were able to live in peace in the past? How is it that the North courted intelligentsia from the South, Southeast, Southwest? ABU is the best mixed university in Nigeria. They brought people from everywhere, including Africans in diaspora. We are brought in to give them what they wanted. They were not crying that too many Southerners are coming to eat our money here. No, because they needed to generate what they had to eat. And they needed to raise their human capacity. And they had to bring people from everywhere, not thinking of region or where you're coming from.
In
so
light of those...
The purpose was the goal that they were seeking.
In light of some of those sentiments...
And that's what happens in federalism.
Right. Now, in light of some of those sentiments that you're sharing, you know, we're seeing heightened sort of nationalistic sentiments across the world. And, you know, we are seeing a rise in, if I may call it, you know, ethnic bigotry happening locally as well. Having said that, I always like to consider the law of unintended consequences. If we increase federalism at this point, is that in favor of a unified Nigeria project? Or does that put a unified Nigeria at great risk once we start to further divide ourselves?
You know, the interesting thing about federation is that it leaves no room for these challenges we are facing now. Now, your question is like trying to project into a federated Nigeria with the views of the current problems that we are suffering, which are problems associated with unitary constitution and unitary environments. Once you go into a federated environment, nobody tells you what to do. If you ask the states to exploit the resources within their areas, and there is no state in Nigeria, I can assure you, I recall I did a work in 2002 in which I looked at our resource composition. There is no state in Nigeria that does not have some natural resource or the other with which it can stand. So the moment you move to federalism, there is no room for anybody to even talk of another person. Everybody will be busy exploiting what is within them. To be able to generate, they have to pay salaries at the end of the month. They have to plan development and they have to develop their territory. Automatically, the things we are seeing now, which are results of a unitarized federal environment, will cease to exist. They will no longer be necessary. So if you look at it from the present condition and our present view of a unitary state, you will anticipate a lot of problems. But the moment you tell Rivers State, the moment you implement federalism and Rivers State, Lagos State, Kano State, from next month you will pay your salary, you will generate what you use in paying your salary, they will all run out to exploit to the best possible means all the resources that are available within their territory. They will look for areas of comparative advantage in which they can invest. It's not happening now. Why should Rivers State not be heavily invested in marine economy? Why should Rivers State not be involved in petroleum economy? Why should we be completely unconnected? Why shouldn't we have state-owned refineries in the areas in which oil is produced? We are not thinking of that now because we are working on this unitary system, which invites everybody to Abuja every month to come and take federal grants with which to run to the next month. So the moment you institute federalism, every unit gets busy. There is no room for even a quarrel because you won't tell workers they will not get their salary at the end of the month. So you will exploit all you have to make it possible for you to function and for you to achieve the big dreams you will lay out for yourself.
All right. Professor Nwokocha, now I hear you, and that's why I asked the first question, so that to just clear all doubts, especially from your view, that we are in need, in fact, urgent need, as the Patriots have put it, for a constitutional review. But all regions of the country might not maybe agree, because that's why you'd see that, as if I had detailed the years where we had national conferences, and especially the last one 10 years ago, nothing was implemented from that national conference, despite the amount of money that was spent to have that happen. The president himself, in his response, if we're to maybe judge from his response, didn't seem to be very keen. He didn't throw it away, but he said that he had more pressing issues around the economy to deal with before he begins to focus on constitution. But Professor Kingsley Moghalu says the constitutional review is of utmost importance because it has economic impact. Do you think that the president's response should be taken on board in terms of, let's deal with the economy first, constitutional review can come later? Is that putting the cart before the horse, or should he look at the important issue of constitutional review before addressing economic matters?
You know, sometimes, some years back, Professor Klodake was asked something like this question: between the economy and democracy, which one should we treat as most important? And he asked the simple question, who should decide? Democracy comes before the economy. The challenges Mr. President is facing that he needs to fix are problems arising from the wrong constitutional order. So if you want to fix those problems, minding the issue of constitution is a direct way of fixing those problems. But if you want to fix those problems before you come back to fixing the constitution, you will not succeed because you are trying to work on an impossible environment with an impossible structure. So if I were to advise the president, I also had, when you began, you talked of the elder statesman's advice that the president should be cautious. I agree. Everybody is in fear. This this upside-down constitutional order we are operating now, which is unitary for a federal environment, is favoring some units or favoring some individuals. Our economy will never get it right, but there are individuals who are increasingly getting rich every day. You have watched, and we have retrogressed from an oil-producing nation to a nation that is exporting a whole lot of oil every year, but our NNPC will report zero profit. Nearly all our oil is now stolen. So people are benefiting from the present structure, and they will try to resist it. It's like we just talked about subsidy. Subsidy wasn't helping anybody, but there were people that were benefiting from it, and they insisted by all means and tried everything they could to keep it going. So that will be there. But as a serious country, you have to face the reality. You also need to anticipate those reactions. That is why you have agencies that should reach out and sensitize the people. If you are in Benue State, if you are in Kano or Kaduna where they have arable lands, you have nothing to fear. So part of the steps you can take is sensitize the people in every region, bring their attention to the monumental opportunity, economic opportunity they have under a proper federation. Make them see in advance the promised land, which they are not seeing at the moment. Actually, it will create problem, of course, if you just get up and decree something. So sensitize the people, make them see the benefit that lies in it for them, make them see how government will even assist them, support them in making sure that they are able to get into the new environment, and everybody will key in. But don't expect anybody, including those who will be advantaged, don't expect them to key in without sensitization. So it is the responsibility of the appropriate agency of government to ensure that people are sensitized to enable them do the right thing, have the right frame of mind for going into that new situation.
Professor, sir, I think everybody answered my question, the first question I asked. I said, where is the report that we spent billions to write 10 years ago? Is you want to tell us that we'll just forget that report like that after all the money that were paid the delegates in the place? Where is that report? Is it that we're just going to forget it like it never? We spent money on it. People went to Abuja, they had hotels and everything to write that report. Where is that report? And what bona fide do you think President Tinubu will have to even review any, request for a constitutional reform? When he was in opposition, he campaigned for a constitutional change. In fact, the APC set up El-Rufai-led committee. They too, they had their report. Where is their report?
Yes.
So now we have two reports I can point to now. Where is their report? Because, please, so is it that all the money we spent for that constitutional confab then has just gone like that? Where's the APC's report, El-Rufai's report? Where is confab report 2014? Where are those reports?
These are very valid questions, Rufai. Very, very valid questions. And of course, as citizens, we have the right to ask these questions and to demand that our government should tell us what they have done with the reports. At the moment, you are not seeing those reports implemented. So we have the right to ask government, what have you done with them? Even though if you ask me in advance, I will tell you that even when they implement them, they won't solve our problems. For the reason I have given earlier, there were still an attempt to panel beat either a circle or a triangle into a rectangle. They were not far-reaching enough, but that is my business. The people are entitled to know what has happened to the report of the confab they had and on which huge amount of money of their resources was spent. So yes, it's a relevant question, it's a valid question that we should ask government and we should demand to know. Because even if we are moving on, we ought to know, we are entitled to know the errors or the faults or the insufficient provisions or recommendations that are contained in those reports that will make moving on necessary. So I agree with you. I should join you in asking our government, where are the reports? Okay. We should have those reports. We should review them.
Just to put in context, at 2014, Nigerian government was spending 1.18 billion monthly as pegs to delegates at the national conference. 1.18 billion monthly.
Okay, so let me just move the conversation forward, because you mentioned implementation, and I know Rufai is also emphasizing implementation, but let's look at the Constitution as it stands, because there's schools of thought who say that there's nothing intrinsically wrong with the Constitution. Our issue is the human element, in that it is not, the Constitution itself is not being implemented. And I'll give a very recent example, which is the landmark ruling on local government autonomy, that local governments are now supposed to receive their FAC allocation directly into their accounts. It's been over almost a month since that ruling, and the local governments are yet to receive that money. And in fact, the Minister of Finance and coordinating Minister of the Economy has said that it will take some months before the ruling can be implemented. So the question is it really the Constitution, or is it the human beings who are implementing it that are the challenge?
There are human challenges, but that's not our problem. Our problem is more with the structure of the Constitution. In fact, it is the structure of the Constitution that is making it possible for the human factor to play the role it's playing. If you have a federal constitution which says that everything in the country, all natural resources belong to the federal government, you have a problem. So what are the federating units, what are they doing? Because what defines federalism is fiscal policy. If you take away fiscal policy from any federal state, it's a unitary state you have. So there is everything wrong with that structure. Even the court system has problems arising from the structure of the Constitution. I don't want to talk about the last judgment which you referred to, which, if you look closely at the Constitution, raises questions as to whether we shouldn't change the system. So I think we have a structural problem. We have people who have problems with adjusting to laws, implementing laws the way they are, let alone implementing those laws with the loopholes that our Constitution has that gives them the privilege and opportunity to act anyhow they like. Recall that just about 2-3 years ago, I think it's about 2 years ago, the Supreme Court was approached on similar question, Executive Order 10, which tried to do the same thing. And the Supreme Court said, look, so long as Section 126 of the Constitution is the way it is, all payments must go to the state. Yes, you mean well, you want the legislature and the judiciary to be independent sufficiently as intended by the Constitution, but this is the law. That law has not changed. We have a different result, we have a different interpretation. I am bothered by anything that runs roughshod of the Constitution. I am not concerned with where it is coming from or who, no matter how highly placed. The day we lose the guarantee and the security of a constitution, a functional constitution that defines our do's and don'ts, we are in trouble, because we get into the rule of the thumbs, where what you get is what who is presiding decides to give. So I have problem even with some of those interpretations that are saying something different from what is written in black and white in the Constitution. So I think in a nutshell that we do have a monumental structural challenge which changing or fixing your Constitution will solve. Because once you do so, those who are exercising powers to absurd levels and in manners that are inconsistent with the Constitution will no longer have those rights and those privileges or opportunities to exercise those powers, because the Constitution would have taken them away. So I believe it is more structural than human. The human is a natural problem, but we can fix it with the law.
Yes, we can fix it with the law. Let me continue from that thought. Now, to make an argument for the other side, for those who are not really in agreement with a constitutional, review or just doing away with the old Constitution, would you say that amendment of some key laws or legislation would be as impactful rather than going through the process? Because we've seen how tedious that is and the resistance from different quarters. For instance, in March of 2022, the National Assembly at the time sought to look at least 68 laws, extend some of them, amend some of them, create some new ones, and was going to go through the process. Would that be an easier way to tackle in the immediate some of the challenges of the current constitution before we then go through? Because as we've already mentioned, it's been very expensive. Yet not a lot has come out of it. There's a lot of back and forth, disagreements, dissenting views as to whether or not we should do away with the Constitution. Would it not be better to task our lawmakers to look at what we currently have and amend some of those laws?
My sister, in 2022, when we had those sittings, hearings in the various zones, I did present on behalf of my people a recommendation which keys very much into what you're saying. A man who finds himself in the rain asks himself, where did the rain begin to beat me? And our people say, if you suddenly find you don't have your towel, the best thing to do is to go back to the point at which you remember you last used towel. What has changed in Nigerian constitutional history from independence to now is the removal of 23 items from the concurrent list and transferring of those items by the military government of General Ironsi into the exclusive list. So if I want to go by what you're saying, you don't even need a long trench. If the National Assembly can meet today and effect amendment, moving back those 23 items into the concurrent list, problem is solved, because it will enable the states, it will empower the states to do what they are supposed to do. It will enable them even secure their territories. It will enable them exploit their resources and pay 50% tax to the federal government. What we changed in the 1963 Constitution is what is haunting us. It was those items moved from concurrent lists where they are available for federating units into exclusive lists where everything became property of federal government that threw us into this constitutional quagmire.
Okay,
so yes, we can solve that problem by amending the Constitution and returning those things to concurrent list.
Prof.
So that the states can participate in them.
Okay, Prof. Yes. Let me spin it and disagree with you and play devil's advocate, and I'll do it this way. Going back to 63, some of the arguments made by the likes of Kaduna and Zego and the other guys that came together, as espoused in some of the books like Why We Struck, and if you read Johnson Torres' book of what happened around the coup and all of that, was that the states or the regions had so much power vested in the hands of politicians that had their own nefarious intents. I'll give you an instance. In the Western region, we had what we call the wet year. After Akintola had pulled out from Awolowo's architecture, and it was a fight to finish. And he split by setting on his own NNDP that aligned with the Northern People's Congress. And we also had skirmishes like that across the region. And this same power was what led to the very shambolic elections in 64. Those elections that spanned all through 65 and brought a lot of controversy. And in fact, it was in reaction to those elections that the military boys said people were calling on them to save us from these politicians. Today, I submit to you, sir, we have 10 times worse off politicians than we had then. You want to give more power to this crop of politicians? We have 1 minute, 30 seconds to go, sir.
Well, one would agree with you on the surface. But you see, it's not about giving power to the politicians. There were structures in the Constitution for regulating the politicians. The politicians were accountable to some authority. You had a parliamentary system. Your representative at the national was accountable to the state. The state was the more powerful place, and the leaders stayed at the state as regional heads, while their inferiors or their boys were sent to the center. The center wasn't as powerful as it is now. Now, why this change is necessary and why risking the fear that you have talked about now is necessary, is that development happens around the nation, not at the federal capital territory. No matter how many skyscrapers we build there, there will be no development, or it will not be development. But just take that microcosm of the West as a unit, an entity. They had a policy which empowered the individual. Their core economic choice was cocoa. Individuals were encouraged to grow. The board was ready to buy off everything you can grow. The board exported. The resources from that was used to give the children of those growing it free education, health, and other things. Yeah. So if you look at it at that central level and consider that political question, yes, you will be concerned. But in practice, it wasn't happening in all regions at the same time.
So you're saying checks and balances.
Yes.
Yeah. And we also had better politicians
checks and balances,
the likes of Michael Okpara and the likes that were better human beings than what the crop we have today. Thank you so much for your time.